Welcome to the Authority File, the academic library podcast from Choice. Choice is a publishing division of the ACRL and the publisher of Choice Reviews, Resources for College Libraries, and CC Advisor. I'm Bill Mickey, the host of the podcast and the editorial director at Choice. Well, we're back from our holiday break, and I hope all you listeners are enjoying the new year so far. As I mentioned in the first episode of this mini-series, we're pretty excited for 2019. We've got some new episode formats coming your way, including some live interviews at this year's ACRL conference in Cleveland, and we're also lining up some special guest interviews of Choice's Outstanding Academic Title award-winning authors. We've invited some of the Choice reviewers to interview the authors of the OAT titles that they reviewed. Look for the first of those matchups to hit in early February. In the meantime, for this two-episode series, we're sitting down with Mary Ellen Davis, the executive director of the ACRL. Mary Ellen was here in Connecticut at the Choice offices, so we figured why not grab a few minutes to pop into the Choice Authority File studios and talk about what's coming up for the association. In this second episode, Mary Ellen and I talk about ACRL's expanded commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. The association has always been progressive in its diversity initiatives, but it recently made EDI a core commitment and is making it a stronger statement about the importance of these values to the organization. We'll talk about what that means and how the organization will be promoting these values outward to its membership. So, another pretty big initiative ACRL is getting into is equity, diversity, and inclusion. Promoting that within the association itself, but also looking at ways on how to promote that outwards to the membership and what the membership can be doing at their own institutions. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how EDI has evolved into what we're calling a core commitment for ACRL. The origination of the initiatives, maybe explain what a core commitment is as well.
Yes, I'm very excited about this important work that ACRL is undertaking. However, diversity has always been an important value of the association, so this isn't brand new. But what we're trying to do is, I think, really that the social and political events of the last few years push the board to want to have a stronger statement about the importance of this value to the organization. This core commitment, and I'll give you a little bit more idea in a minute, but it really provides an opportunity to convene a division-wide focus on one of our core values and lets ACRL examine and develop support in these critical areas at a time when many in our profession are regularly expressing concern to us and feel a threat to our own core values.
Right.
So I think it's a strong statement about how ACRL values diversity and inclusive communities. And the core commitment is a short statement that I will just read so that you can hear what it is. ACRL is dedicated to creating diverse and inclusive communities in the association and in academic and research libraries. This core commitment permeates the work of the association, cutting across all ACRL sections, committees, interest and discussion groups, and communities of practice. The association will acknowledge and address historical racial inequities, challenge oppressive systems within academic libraries, value different ways of knowing, and identify and work to eliminate barriers to equitable services, spaces, resources, and scholarship. So we've laid out quite an agenda for ourselves.
So what's been involved in sort of developing that statement? Who are the stakeholders within the association and so on?
Well, when the board started looking at how it could have a broader, stronger statement about diversity, they first met with their leadership council, the leaders of our communities of practice, our committees and things, at the midwinter meeting in this year, and had some good conversations about equity, diversity, and inclusion and what members wanted from us. So we reached out to leadership first. We refined our ideas. A board working group also did a survey to members in terms of how could ACRL be helpful, what were they thinking about, what were they doing on their campuses. And then we employed the services of DeEtta Jones Associates to work with the board, the chairs of the 4 goal area committees and the diversity committee and the senior staff to really look at cultural competence and equity, diversity and inclusion, implicit bias, and see what we as an association could do about it.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I mean, and can you talk a little bit about how these initiatives are taking shape in terms of what you're actually doing to promote these values internally and externally?
Well, we really, at the strategic planning session we had in October with all those participants that I just mentioned,
Right.
We revised the strategic plan to develop that core commitment as well as to review the goals and the objectives that we had to make sure that that EDI permeated all of those things. And the board approved a new strategic plan just a few weeks ago. So we've got that new strategic plan that we will roll out again to our leadership council coming up in midwinter. And the participants in that group are also completing another online course from Deanna Jones Associates on reducing the negative impact of bias in the workplace. We're trying to inform ourselves and make sure that we understand all the issues and ramifications of those issues.
Right.
But ACRL has had a number of initiatives already in diversity, so I just want to remind your listeners of the things that we have been doing, and then I'll highlight a few things that we're looking to do.
Great.
So in 2012, we issued cultural competency standards, and they've been used by a number of libraries, and they're currently being updated by our longstanding diversity committee. So we're hoping next spring to announce a new update on those standards and roll out some training and conversations about how to engage with those and how to make them meaningful. ACRL added a diversity alliance a few years ago, whose goal was to increase the hiring pipeline of those from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups. We currently have 52 institutional members who are committed to creating residency programs, providing additional professional development experiences, rotations throughout the library to help them understand the broad work that academic libraries can do. So we're excited about that. We've long awarded travel scholarships to our professional development events, preferencing applicants who come from these underrepresented groups. And I'm proud to say that since 2012, ACRL has given more than $425,000 in scholarships to attend its professional development events. Some of that money has come from our revenue sources, and some of that money has been donated by other ACRL members who want to give back to the profession and give a hand to that next generation of library leaders. So it's kind of a very visible way that the association is making that commitment.
Right. That's great.
We've annually provided support for at least one ALA Spectrum Scholar. And for those who aren't familiar with Spectrum Scholars, those are students enrolled in graduate schools of library and information science. And so we provide money to help offset their tuition costs. Since October, based on our new core commitment, we've also kind of taken a look at some of our internal practices. And so the board had another working group that looked at our call for volunteers. Was the language in the volunteer call as inclusive as it needs to be? Could we make it better to make sure it clear? Because associations are often looked at as perhaps too cliquey, or you have to know somebody. So we wanted to make sure we had an open and transparent process. And in addition, we added some questions that are optional, but to ask people to give us some of their personal data so that we could start to see who is on our committees, and are we getting new people, and are we getting diverse groups represented. We plan this spring to review our call for presentations to ensure that we're using inclusive language there and that we're being equitable in those calls. And we're exploring what other kinds of conversations and orientations we can provide to both ACRL members who are presenting for us, going out and doing our road shows, our information literacy immersion programs, as well as other members. There's a lot to do, so we're exploring lots of options.
Yeah, well, that certainly sounds pretty comprehensive. I think one of the things when we were talking about this earlier that you've mentioned is, a challenge for, I suppose, any association is scaling, as you put it, sort of the EDI initiatives to a very large membership, 10,000 almost in the case of ACRL. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about some of the, I think some of the initiatives you've already mentioned kind of scale, these values out into the community that ACRL serves. But are there any kind of early ideas percolating in terms of, how the association might be helping libraries and librarians specifically to practice equity, diversity, and inclusion in their own institutions.
And I think that is something that we're looking at and that we are recognizing we need to be careful how we proceed there. Many institutions have diversity officers and have campuses with diversity offices. And we want to make sure that what we provide is useful, and people are coming to us with all different levels of engagement, all different levels of understanding. So we don't want to look as if we're offering something people already have.
Yeah.
So when we did the member survey, we got very conflicting advice. Some members said, don't offer any training. We don't want people to feel that if they go to an EDI training that they can check that off their list. I've been to a training, done. I'm an expert on EDI. And then we had other members say, we need more EDI training. So trying to respond to those, diverse viewpoints is one of our challenges in terms of trying to invite people into a conversation. And I think that is going to be key, is not just here's a body of knowledge and now you're ready, but how do we continue to have this conversation and make it an ongoing piece of work?
Right. That makes me think, I'm wondering if you have a perspective on this, associations in general. I mean, not necessarily ACRL specifically, but with something like equity, diversity, and inclusion, what an association's role is in promoting those values, or, providing some support or structure around those values within the market that they serve. Are there any sort of specific ideas or concepts around that you might have in terms of what that association's role is in promoting those values?
Well, I think that there is no one size fits all. Every association has unique experiences, members with different expectations, but I think perhaps a few hallmarks as associations embark upon this work is to look at themselves and make sure that they are that they're open. That the way they do business is transparent, that they're clearly communicating with members, that members understand what is going on. And then I think that half of the equation that's often been missing as organizations and businesses over time have worked to incorporate diversity is that we've stopped at diversity and not looked at inclusiveness. So how do we make a welcoming environment? If we invite people in and then don't invite them to be really a part of the group, then we're not really doing what we need to do to live EDI. So I think those are some of the values that organizations are going to need to live. We're going to need to challenge our own longstanding ways of doing things and make sure that we're open to hearing new voices that may challenge the way we've always been doing.
Okay. That's all we have. Well, Mary Ellen, thank you very much for being on our program.
Well, thank you, Bill. It was great to chat with you this afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you, and I hope many of your listeners at our ACRL conference in Cleveland in April 2019.
Oh, we'll definitely be there. Thank you. You just heard from Mary Ellen Davis, the Executive Director of the ACRL. This concludes the second of our two-part series about new initiatives the ACRL is pursuing at its 2019 conference in Cleveland in April. Find all of the episodes of The Authority File on your favorite podcast app or on our website, choice360.org. Just click on the Librarianship drop-down. On choice360.org, you'll also find information on Choice's entire product platform, including Choice Reviews, CC Advisor, Choice Webinars, resources for college libraries, our white papers, and a whole lot more. A great way to keep up with the Authority File is to join the Choice Authority File Facebook group, which you can access via the Choice Reviews Facebook page. As a member of the group, you can give us feedback, suggest podcast participants, chat with other listeners, and submit new topic ideas. Sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and the production and editing are done by Choice's digital media specialist, Mark Turks. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.